Uh, Hi everyone. We've just got a few people still joining, so we'll give it maybe another minute or so, and then we'll kick off. Okay, so numbers getting up. I'll start when it gets to 14:31 on my clock, so I'll have 30 seconds or so. Okay, I think we've got it's 14:31, and I do want to cover quite a lot today, so I will kick off. So I guess first of all, just a quick welcome to the latest instalment of the webinars that Continuate are running, just around kind of BlackLine. Today's topic will be on administration of the application. I'm not going to read down the list on the right-hand side here, but this is basically the topics that we're going to cover. So you can see here, I've probably gone quite aggressive in terms of the topics that we're going to cover. I think we will cover all of this in 45 minutes, but as I say, it's really just to give a bit of an overview and a little bit of best practice just around the administration of the application. Now, just a little slide here, just initially on Continuate, and for those of you who have joined previous sessions, this will be a little bit on repeat, but ultimately Continuate are a boutique consultancy focusing on effectively finance transformations, primarily around that RTR process, and we also do some ERP programs as well. I should actually really have the badge on the screen here, but we are also a BlackLine partner. It's important to mention. As an organisation, we're basically made up of a combination of transformation and system experts, and the vast majority of people here are also kind of qualified accountants. Now, there's also a number of BlackLine partners out there. We do see ourselves as a little bit different, and I think it's this first bullet in this last section here that we see as our differentiator. So, we're really very keen in terms of making sure that the tool or the process is ultimately adopted. We're not here just to simply tick a box and say we've implemented something, and we want to make sure that ultimately our clients get the most out of the application and ultimately their investment as well. So I'm just letting a few more people in. We can also, are agile, so we can form teams, implementation plans, and deliver benefits quickly. And in the past, we've actually won some awards for some of our BlackLine deployments as well. I will leave it at that about Continuate, and I will be even briefer on this slide. So just in terms of myself, I'll simply say that I've been working on the tool for 10 plus years, and I guess pertinent, or especially pertinent to today's call, I have also managed administration teams in the past as well. So hopefully what you'll hear will be born out of a little bit of experience over the next kind of 40 minutes or so. Okay, so just to get into the kind of BlackLine administration section. So this first slide is really just, I guess highlighting, why BlackLine administration matters, and I guess the benefits of having a controlled and strong kind of admin process, which is really the kind of the list of items on the left hand side there. So making sure we've got an effective administration process ultimately kind of drives, stronger financial controls to some extent. We just want to make sure the system is doing what it should do. And then ultimately, users are able to go in and then complete the process, within the application itself. We can also help to drive faster close cycles. Those of you who do an administration role, you'll certainly be familiar with things like reassignment requests. So again, if we're able to turn that type of thing around quickly, ultimately we can drive some savings effectively through that kind of closed cycle as well. Also some reduced audit findings. As I say, the system probably shouldn't really be the issue. There'll always be one or two audit findings, I guess, around processes. But again, we want to make sure that the system again is doing what it should, and we don't have any audit findings from a technical perspective. It also, hugely influences the adoption or, the user experience of the application as well, making sure that, people have effectively got the right rights, they can get to the right bits in the system, and ultimately they can do their job. And so on as well. And, if they are raising requests, like, I don't know, reassignments or access to additional modules or something like that, again, we want to make sure we're getting those things turned around in a kind of timely way. And again, just, overall improving that kind of user adoption and user experience piece. Also better compliance with SOX and internal controls, again, just making sure that the system is set up as it should. And then the final point here is just around that scalable growth. So, it's not uncommon for BlackLine projects to start with a kind of POC. So again, we want to make sure that we can prove out the process and then ultimately set the system up for that growth, whether it be additional entities, additional modules, or whatever that would be. And then I guess on the flip side, in terms of kind of poor administration, so it leads to inconsistent processes. A huge part of most organizations' use case for BlackLine will be that standardization element. There's obviously configuration within BlackLine, but a huge amount of the process is pushed down a particular kind of route. Also around kind of any excessive access rights, so just having people able to access things within the system that they shouldn't be able to do, or approve things within the system as well. So we certainly don't want those situations. Process bottlenecks. So again, my example from reassignments or something like that. And then ultimately, that can then turn into a backlog. People can't access the reconciliation; they can't do it. And then ultimately, potentially, that then becomes into an audit concern, because ultimately that reconciliation wasn't done, for a particular period. And again, a bit of a lack of adoption as well. And then finally, and it's probably the worst case scenario, is where, effectively a process has been migrated into BlackLine and ultimately it gets pulled out of BlackLine. Now, that may not be because purely the administration. It will obviously be some functionality in there as well. But we certainly do hear from time to time, people have come back to, an Excel-based process as well. So, as I say, the administration is, hugely key, to effectively maintaining that kind of process and all the things I've talked about on this slide here just now. Now, if I go to the next slide, and personally, I really like this slide, having, as I mentioned at the beginning, having managed a kind of administration team in the past. So this is a kind of maturity model. And I think there's kind of 4 steps that most administration teams would go through. And I think the first bucket there is probably around, the point of go live. So, effectively, it's a very basic kind of, I guess, understanding of the application, very much reactive administration. Somebody sends me a request, I'm going to go and process that request within the system. I guess as people get more familiar with the tool, understand it a bit better, then begin to kind of develop kind of standard processes. Now we'll talk a little bit later about like the roles and so on as well, but a lot of organizations have local admins in country or sitting within finance teams, so again we can begin to kind of standardize that process a little bit as well. There may also be things like ticketing tools like ServiceNow involved in terms of like raising kind of user access requests and stuff like that as well. Now, as we move further to the right here, and I would call it a bit more of a kind of managed model, where actually we begin to look at some of the data as well. Now, I've got a slide later in the pack. We'll talk about some of the kind of the data that it's worth kind of looking at and so on as well around this administration. But as I say, it's really using data to drive, improvements kind of within the system. And then the final bucket here is around this optimized. So, effectively gold star in terms of the administration, where effectively we're continually looking at that kind of continuous improvement aspect, potentially looking at things in BlackLine like account rules or auto grouping rules, really to drive, a huge amount of that automation and remove, a fair degree of the risk around the administration process and really kind of driving that automation process as well. Now, I think it's fair to say this is definitely a journey, as I mentioned at the beginning there. I think, the point of go live, we're very much probably in that first bucket. And, as the kind of process matures, over a period of time, then we look to get to the optimized bucket there on the kind of the right-hand side. Now, if we go to the next slide, so just a little bit kind of high-level overview of the kind of the role of a BlackLine administrator. Now, I put it into kind of 4 buckets here. So the first one here is around security and access. So ultimately, as an administrator, you'll be doing user provisioning, assigning roles and entities and so on as well. So, just, make sure that, again, that is, controlled and we're not giving excessive access rights, as we talked about in one of the earlier slides. Also the system governance, so in terms of that configuration management. So I often think the settings in BlackLine sit really within 2 buckets. The first one being the kind of global settings, and then also you've got like the kind of lower level ones, whether it be task or reconciliation or some sort of journal setting as well. So it's really just ensuring that the system is maintained properly. Again, driving a bit of that process standardization as well. and then also policy enforcement as well. A balance sheet reconciliation policy may say something like every reconciliation should have a risk rating attached, which ultimately drives the frequency. And again, it's the responsibility of the admin effectively to make sure that the system's maintained, reflecting that kind of policy as well. In terms of support, and I think admins are generally speaking probably the first line of support or picking up queries from end users. So, it may be a technical question, it may be a process question, but it's not uncommon to get these types of questions. So it's really just making sure that people are actually able to complete their process, any kind of troubleshooting as well, and then I guess where there's any issues or bugs within the system, the administration team also look after the BlackLine ticketing process as well. And again, it's not uncommon then for the admin team to perform the training. Now, they may not be experts in all of the accounting processes, but fundamentally they'll probably be the process experts in terms of understanding BlackLine the best. And then the final bucket here is the continuous improvement. And I think to a large extent, the system admin is probably a bit of a gatekeeper to some of the improvements that BlackLine bring out. They have a quarter release cycle. I find it probably unlikely that there's too many finance teams, quite honestly, that are reading those release notes. So it's really the responsibility of the administrator. And certainly just now with AI, there's a huge amount of improvements coming through these releases. So again, it's important that we're effectively monitoring that process as well, and then ultimately again trying to optimize the system, and again KPI reporting as well. Now, in terms of I guess best practice, our recommendation in terms of how to do this, we strongly encourage a kind of BlackLine governance review meeting. Now, this may meet monthly, quarterly. It depends very much on the organisation and I guess the number of administrators sometimes as well. But basically, it's just an opportunity to discuss, any issues that are, are around BlackLine. It could be, access issues, any technical issues with the system. Begin to look at things like adoption metrics, and maybe look to do some improvements. Maybe expand the scope of templates, within recs, or create journal masters within the journal process as well. So it's just making sure that effectively we're pushing for some improvements within the process. Also any enhancement requests. I guess BlackLine being a SaaS application, it is very much configurable or customizable. But again, there might be some new functionality or some old functionality that wasn't turned on previously. So again, it's an opportunity just to discuss that as well. And then we always strongly encourage the review of the release updates. And as I mentioned just previously, again, just because of the AI, that will continue to evolve very quickly, I suspect, over the next year or two. So again, there'll be a huge amount of improvements coming from that. So again, just to make sure we're keeping up with the the latest functionality within the system. Okay, and just in terms of some of the key activities, and I will not be reading through all of the different points in this slide. I think for those of you who are administrators, you'll be well aware that there are many activities that you cover, and there's just probably a relatively small kind of sample on there. So I think overall it is quite an expansive role, and it, as I've mentioned a couple of times now, it is really critical in terms of supporting the underlying processes as well. Now, in terms of the roles, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of all of the different roles that we've got within BlackLine around the administration. So out of the box, there is effectively the three roles that you see on the left-hand side there. So we've got the local admin, system admin, and business admin. The system and business admin is effectively the same role. I often refer to it as the king or queen of the system. They can effectively get to all areas. They can change all settings. There's a very small handful that tickets are required for BlackLine for things like reporting currency and so on, but 99.9% of the settings can be changed by these two roles. There is one differentiator between these two roles, and it's around the ability to provide access to users or amend users' profiles. System admin can do that, but business admin can't. But apart from that, those two roles are exactly the same. Now, we've also got local admin in here. Now, that is very much a much more stripped back admin role and kind of focuses on those lower level administration activities, and you can kind of see them on the table there on the left hand side. So it's really, settings, maybe around some of the recs, so assigning templates, maybe running some reports, doing some user assignments, that type of thing. And it's not uncommon for those types of roles really to sit within the finance teams. We're obviously aware, everyone's aware of the criticality of month end, and maybe the admin team isn't there to support it 24 hours a day. So there is the option sometimes just to put the local admin role into those finance teams, just as a bit of enablement around those key periods as well. Hopefully everybody knows everything in BlackLine is effectively date timestamped. So again, it's easy to get an audit trail in terms of any changes have been made. We can see what the change was, who made it, and ultimately if it needs to be reversed, it can also be reversed. Now, the role here on the right-hand side, and again, everybody might not be aware of this, but BlackLine does offer some out-of-the-box reconfiguration of the system admin role to create client bespoke roles and access rights. So effectively, you can configure an admin role. As I say, it's an extension of the system admin role, and then within it, you can grant access to specific jobs, specific areas of the application, and so on as well. So it just allows a little bit more kind of flexibility, around those admin roles, just in terms of restricting exactly what people should get, and so on as well. One caveat just on the role or the bespoke role, as it is an extension of the system admin role. Any alerts that a system admin role would get, the kind of the customized or configured role would also get them as well. But as I say, I've used this in the past for certain clients, and it can be useful as well. Albeit, I would imagine 90% of the work can probably get covered off by the standard BlackLine rules that we have here. So just a little bit here, just in terms of how I guess those rules kind of operate. So there's always going to be a little bit of overlap, and I was talking about the governance meeting earlier in the slides. And I would certainly expect all of those roles, whether it be system, business, or local admin, to effectively join at least the governance meeting or some kind of admin meeting as well, because there certainly is kind of crossover. Now, some activities typically sit within a more technical team, so maybe things like integrations, making sure that imports go in fine. If we're pulling any data back out of BlackLine and pushing it back into the ERP, like clearing information or anything like that, that's not uncommon. Again, to be held by a business admin role or the bespoke role, and effectively the IT teams would look after that piece. Well, effectively the process side in terms of any reassignments, template assignments, anything like that, would effectively be done by another team, but they would sit within that that kind of same model as well. And again, we've got that local admin role as well, and again, it's not uncommon for that to sit within country, or as I said earlier, within kind of finance teams as well. So as I say, there is an overlap between these, and I think depending on your organisation and the model that you've kind of chosen, again, it's just to make sure that there's really kind of clear and concise responsibilities, and everybody's understanding exactly what their role is within the system as well. Okay, I just want to talk here a little bit just around, I guess, a very good method of tracking those activities. Now, again, depends a little bit on the size of the organisation and the number of administrators that you have, but there's obviously quite a lot of processes, as you saw in some of the previous slides, and it's probably not it's relatively easy to maybe miss something within it. Now, as I say, one of the fantastic methods, to some extent, practicing what we preach, is actually to embed those administration tasks directly within the system, and we use the task module, and you'll see a screenshot that I've got here from our partner portal, and you can see on the example here, there's some items in here about unassigned accounts and communication to local admins for various things. So again, it's just as I say, practicing what we preach. And again, we can, effectively get all the benefits that you would see from tasks in terms of visibility and the status of any actions, ultimately, and we're able to track that process and effectively make sure that nothing is missed. Now, just I guess a couple of bits of best practice around any tasks that you do or any tasks that you create. So we want to make sure that, and this isn't just applicable for administration tasks, this would be for any task within the system, but we want to make sure that those tasks are ultimately simple, relevant, and actionable. We do encourage the use of the dependency functionality to certify, parent tasks. So I don't know, as an administration, maybe you've got a daily task, complete all my activities on, day one, but that could be made up of 5 subtasks. Make sure the integrations went fine, make sure I've actioned any requests within the system, make sure I've done the reassignments and so on as well. We tick those 5 subtasks, and ultimately then the parent task gets signed off, and then we've got comfort that we've done everything for that particular day, and then we're effectively into this kind of same kind of processes the next day. Always important to avoid duplicate tasks, or should I say ambiguous tasks, where 2 tasks look very similar. Any excessive dependencies, now as much as I encourage dependencies, there is probably a balance to strike around that. We probably don't want to get to the point where we've got 100 dependencies for one task. That would probably be a bit too much. But again, it's just really just thinking about how you structure it in terms of your process as well. And we certainly want to make sure we remove any obsolete activities as well. So, a process may have dropped away, it's no longer required, but we want to make sure, rather than just effectively ticking the item in the task list, that ultimately we put a close date on that and we stop the task from generating. And then, I guess as with all things, we then want to make sure we're performing a kind of regular review, basically to make sure that list is up to date and the process hasn't changed as well. Now, it's worth mentioning, I think, tasks that will form the part of the vast majority of BlackLine customers' BlackLine package. It's certainly probably the least technical module to configure in terms of actually setting up the tasks. Most of the work is generally done outside, actually preparing the task list and any dependencies as well. But yeah, as I say, practicing what we preach, and it's good functionality, directly within the system as well. Now we've got just a little bit around KPIs, and I mentioned at the beginning. It's important that we kind of look at this. BlackLine itself is not a reporting tool. It's obviously got the reporting layer that sits, across the top of it. I've been using BlackLine long enough to remember before that reporting layer, when it was a fairly restricted, set of reports in there. You can effectively report on everything now within the system. Now, from an administration perspective, user metrics are always important, so we want to make sure effectively that we've got, we've got the active users set up. Make sure that actually those users that we've got set up are actually accessing the system. I guess BlackLine's kind of model has changed slightly, where there's this move to a platform proposal rather than the old SKU of individual modules, and then you're buying a set number of licenses. So now it's the platform model, and there's effectively unlimited license, or 9,999 as well. So to some extent, I think those in the platform will hopefully see the challenge of maybe a lack of licenses tailing away now. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still be checking, to make sure that people that have got access to the system, it should have access to the system. And certainly when I managed a team previously, we were sending out an email once a quarter, asking users if they still required access to the system. And you can see when people have logged in, through the user admin grid as well. It's also worth keeping an eye on the number of admin users. One of my pitfalls I'll talk about later is actually having too many admin users. So again, we just want to, basically make sure that we're, kind of keeping an eye on these types of things. Now, the 2 other buckets that I've got on this screen just now, the kind of system configuration and the operational metrics, to some extent, I do think these slightly merge a little bit. I mentioned way back at the beginning as well about the kind of system admin being a bit of a kind of gatekeeper of the system in terms of improvements. I also think the same to some extent is applicable to kind of the MI or the reporting as well. Technically, they'll be the most proficient with the tool compared to end users. So they're probably, they'll be the person that gets asked in terms of, I want a report that does X, Y, and Z. Can you help build it as well? In terms of those, I guess types of reports that people will be looking at. So from a kind of, I guess, configuration perspective, assignments. There's obviously the dashboard on the homepage. I appreciate not everybody assigns reconciliations and tasks and so on to individuals. Some people use the team access as well, but again, we want to make sure that if you are an organization that does assign all reconciliations or whatever it would be, that that's kind of complete. Also some template usage, and this goes back a little bit to what I was talking about in terms of some of the improvements within the process. If I use Rex as an example, maybe you're just using bank, subledger, and general list templates. Well, maybe it's then beginning to look at some of the other more kind of advanced ones as well that will drive a bit more auto certification within the system as well. Also things like manual decertification requests. So, how often are you having to approve it? There is this Goldilocks period after a reconciliation is approved, but again, how much, admin work is involved in effectively rework, for the end users. And then, the number of, settings change requests that you get, every month, my reconciliation, can you please change the frequency to, quarterly to monthly, whatever that would be as well. So it's well worth keeping an eye, on those types of metrics. From an operational perspective, again, we're just trying to, I guess, glean some insight, from the process, so we can begin to look at things like the completion rate, what percentage of recs are done, what percentage of tasks are complete. There's obviously dashboards and so on, within the system, but again, you can probably glean a little bit more information, through the reporting as well. What percentage are we on time? I talked earlier about trying to reduce the close cycle. It's certainly an ambition for most organizations out there. So what percentage are we effectively getting on time today? Any kind of aging analysis as well, and any analysis by item type. So again, looking at, there's probably a bit of crossover there with aging as well. I always recommend that list components should be looked at with aging as well, just to ensure that people are marking things as correct and in line with policy. Things like the number of rejections. So again, we can report on that, and that probably gives a bit of insight into things like training. Do we see a particular person that 50% of their recs get rejected, or the journals they raise get rejected? Well, maybe there's a training exercise for that particular person or team or whoever it would be as well. And then also looking at things like the kind of automation rate. So what kind of auto certification percentage are you getting from your process? And again, that links back to some of the uses of the templates and so on as well. And then we'll go into things like thresholds and so on as well. And then for those of you who use transaction matching, again, that match rate, there should always be an evolving process around matching, always trying to push up that kind of match rate. So we always recommend matching gets reviewed at least annually, just for any kind of improvements or again, changes. And again, AI will help with some of that as well. There's obviously a huge amount more that you can do within the system. I know personally I've built reconciliation life cycles and so on in the past. So I would strongly encourage you guys to have a look at the reporting module within BlackLine and have a bit of a discussion with the kind of the business or the process side in terms of what they'd like to see as well. It's a treasure trove in there. Slide here just around audit readiness. So fundamentally, BlackLine, our users are performing, key financial close processes within the system, and then ultimately, because of that, BlackLine will form part of that kind of wider audit process, and that could be internal or external. There's obviously the different roles within the system as well, but from a system perspective, what the auditors generally ask for, there's generally a question around user access, so making sure that people have got the correct access, and I guess back to my poor administration from one of the earlier slides, no excessive access within there. There'll also be a question probably around, what's the process for, providing access to users. Again, just making sure that we've got all the approvals and so on in place as well. Same is applicable for role assignments within there as well. Also, any approval evidence. Again, some organizations use a ticketing process where effectively there's a workflow in ServiceNow or something like that. Other organizations are maybe a bit more basic in terms of just using emails and so on as well. But again, just making sure we're kind of keeping all of that evidence as well for any kind of audit questions that come up. They'll also ask about process completeness. Now, that's probably more from an admin perspective, more from a technical perspective. How do we, for example, get comfort that we're making sure we're importing every account from our trial balance? So there'll be some questions around that, in terms of the integrations, that kind of piece as well. Just, making sure effectively that, again, that the system is doing ultimately what it should do as well. Any technical design playbooks. Now, actually, as a customer, I did build a technical design playbook and actually made the audit process 100 times easier. And effectively, it was just the system settings put into a Word document with a bit of rationale as to why certain decisions were made and a bit of the logic behind it. But I think when I handed that document over, I don't think I got another question around the process from the auditors at the time. So not every organization has one of these, but again, it can make the process a little bit easier when it comes to audit time. Again, any policies and procedures. So again, I mentioned the user access provisioning, but anything else within the system as well. So what's the process for adding a new entity or something like that as well. So there will be questions around that. And as I say, any of that kind of change management, documentation as well, which I'm about to talk about on the next slide. So really just making sure from an administration perspective, that we're keeping ourselves right and making sure everything is documented with the relevant approvals. Next slide. Just a slide here just around change management. So in terms of, I guess, where we see the kind of key drivers of change, now there's 5 probably buckets, there's maybe a few more out there, but these will be the main ones. So mentioned a few times during this call just around the BlackLine releases. So the chunkier releases come on a quarterly basis, but there is also monthly releases as well. So as I mentioned, critical that admin look at this and understand the impact or any benefits that those updates will bring your organization's particular process. In terms of any functionality updates or anything like that as well. Also, any kind of policy updates, we do recommend Continuate, having an annual review of any kind of policies and so on as well, generally speaking ahead of year end. So we're effectively ready for the following year. So again, there might be some changes that come out of that. Any audit findings. So again, there might be some changes to the process. And then finally, any additional scope. So again, that could be bringing in additional entities to existing modules, or it could be expanding the kind of module offering out a little bit as well. In terms of what we've got on the right-hand side, so again, just the key points, and this isn't necessarily BlackLine specific. It's probably the same for any application out there. But first and foremost, we want to understand and assess the impact of the change. I want to then discuss that change with the kind of key stakeholders and any SMEs. Ultimately, everybody's got a sandbox environment of BlackLine as well, so we want to make sure that we, do thorough testing within it, so we understand, any kind of, I guess, issues or limitations with the particular process. There's also then the training aspect in terms of actually rolling it out, communicating any changes, and then ultimately and actively following up, during the post-change or hypercare period, to identify any issues or challenges, and ultimately, any lessons learned out of the back of that. I talked in the previous slide just around, what should we document. So there's just a little bit more information here around that. So, in terms of any changes, well, what changed? Why was that change, enabled? I would also include any kind of testing results that you've done around that, just to kind of back up that it's had the positive impact that we would expect. Ultimately, who approved the change? They'll probably, well, I guess in a lot of cases, it's probably a combination of kind of business users and also technical teams. And ultimately, when was it implemented, and any lessons learned out of the back of it as well. So we can improve for next time as well. As I say, this is not necessarily just BlackLine specific. This would be applicable for any application as well. But yeah, again, it's making sure from an administration perspective that we're just keeping ourselves, right as well. Okay, just a slide here, just around some common admin pitfalls, and there's probably a few more out there, but I think these are the kind of the key ones. First one here is just too many administrators. There can on occasion, certainly at the point of go live, be a bit of a clamour to have lots of people assigned to the administrators. Again, there's a balance to strike. It won't be one size fits all for one organization. So again, it's just, thinking about, making sure that, we've got some control around the system and so on as well. No periodic access review. So again, I've touched on this a number of times through this presentation. So just making sure that access is effectively limited to what it should be, and we're not given excessive access rights. No periodic system review, so we're not effectively in that kind of continuous improvement world, and we're just letting the system be as it is, and we're not trying to improve it as well. Any poor governance, so if there isn't those types of calls that I mentioned at the beginning, where we effectively get the key stakeholders together and have a bit of a discussion around BlackLine, again, that can lead to some issues and gaps ultimately within the actual finance processes as well. Outdated organizational structures, so I guess organizations do go through general change. It could be acquisitions, divestments, anything like that. Fundamentally, the organizational structure in BlackLine forms a huge backbone of the system, whether it be around access or different things as well. So we want to just make sure that effectively that organizational structure, is fully up to date, and we've got the correct levels and things are in the correct place within that. And then the final point here. Probably laboured the point a little bit now around some of the reporting, but just in terms of ignoring any data driven, as I said, there's a huge treasure trove of information sitting within your BlackLine instance that can shed real insight into your financial close process as well. So always good to look at data and make decisions based on data rather than a feeling or anything like that. Now I've got one final slide I just want to quickly cover off, and then I'll open up for any kind of Q&A. Now, I guess what I've talked about here just in terms of, I guess, managing that administration process. Now, at Continuate, we do offer a service to support effectively everything that I've talked about to this point as well. And this is called Continuate Care, and it's a support. We do some optimization work and ultimately some enablement or training and stuff as well. So process or the service itself is designed for existing BlackLine customers who maybe just want a bit of a review of their system, potential improvement roadmap, that type of thing, or any kind of clients or teams that are preparing for any kind of new regulations or ultimately expanding their scope and some support around that. It may not be us actually doing the deployment, it may just be a little bit of advisory work as well. And then ultimately, as I've mentioned a few times, the BlackLine release is not most commonly read document, I would suggest. But again, obviously we do that as part of our kind of standard process, and ultimately, we can then share that with organizations to make sure that you're in line effectively with the BlackLine roadmap and using all the latest functionality. And again, in terms of what we do, discover, understand the process, review it, and then ultimately, as I say, provide that kind of roadmap. And we can also do the delivery. And then in terms of what you gain, it's really just support for your kind of SMEs or your administration teams with those, optimization plans and quick win roadmaps and so on as well. Okay, so I think I've been talking now for 40 minutes, so I think I got through all the slides, which was good. I'll maybe just pause just in case there's any questions from anybody at all just now. Do we have anything logged in the Q&A section at all, Amelia? No? Okay. Are there any questions? I think you should be able to put your hand up and I can unmute you. No questions just now. Okay. Okay, I'll maybe just cover off one quick last slide. Oh,
Alan, there is one question.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Let me. Okay, you should be able to. Sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute you. Sorry, apologies.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Oh, Yeah, I hear you now. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. This is Carlos Galindo from Alcon in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm the BlackLine system administrator. And I wanted to ask you, since in one of your slides, you showed training as one of those activities to be performed by an administrator. What do you suggest in using as training material, right? When you deliver these projects of implementing BlackLine, what is the usual for you? We have developed our own training material a few years back. It's been a bit dated because of all the new versions, releases. And we've looked at BlackLine training. We even approached them, but there doesn't seem to be really good material that we think we could leverage, right, from them. So what's your suggested approach? How do you go with that? Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I guess when we do like implementations, the training kind of falls in two buckets. So there is the BlackLine U, which is the online training. Now, we generally recommend that people go and do, a specific subset of that training, because it's a very nice introduction into the system. The limitations, quite honestly, with the BlackLine U training is that it's not client specific. It's just the system. So normally when we do training, we would effectively append that with a specific client's design sort of thing. So for example, you will probably not find a training video on BlackLine U on risk ratings, for example. So we would then have effectively slides to effectively educate the end users on here's our 4 risk categories, here's what makes an account like high risk. But we're effectively creating our own materials off the back of that. I think within the BlackLine community site, you will also find some training documentation. But to be honest, it's probably slightly the same challenges as the BlackLine U as well, in that it's not client specific. It's just system agnostic. It's just the system. So to some extent, Carlos, there's always an action effectively to provide a bit more granular detail in terms of the configuration options that a client has gone down. So yeah, so that was a long-winded answer, but yeah, hopefully that maybe shares. So there will always be a little bit of client specific in there that you have to develop yourself.
I see. Got it. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions at all from anybody? Nope. Okay. Okay. I've come off the slide now, and I appreciate we're slightly over time, so I will not go back. I'll post this call. We will put the recording on the Continuate YouTube channel, and I will send the link should you want to watch it back. If there are any questions that come post the event, do feel free just to email me, and I will more than happily answer those kind of questions. And I think maybe the final thing is then just we run these webinars on a monthly basis, so there will be another one at the end of July. We've not quite fully defined the topic for that session yet, but we will do so by the end of the week, and effectively we'll send the invites out for the next session at the start of next week if you're available towards the end of July. Other than that,
there are 3 questions in the chat panel rather than in the Q&A.
Oh, okay, sorry.
One is about the copy of the slides, which is there will be a video. The recording will be shared.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you answered, but there are 2 other questions.
Okay. What was the audit tool to prevent authorized changes to the system? Yeah, so there is an audit trail within BlackLine. It's generally there on most of the screens now. Within BlackLine, they've done a huge amount of work over the last few years to bring that audit trail to other sections of the application where it wasn't there previously. 100%, I would encourage use of the audit trail, especially around things like the settings and so on as well. And ultimately, that's a really good way of kind of, I guess, managing or identifying if there has been any changes that weren't expected. So yeah, 100% use that. And sorry, is there a way to check smaller changes like the change of repairer for tasks under audit trail? That's a very good question. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I think there is a report. Let me check after the call and I will drop you an email back out just to confirm. I believe there is a way of checking who moved the assignments, but let me just double check and be 100%. Yeah. Any other questions? I appreciate we're going a few minutes over, but just in case there's any other questions, just no. Okay. Okay, well then I'll thank you for your time, and yes, we will share the recording out shortly, and yeah, we'll speak again hopefully at the end of next month. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.